Hello, welcome back. Excellent.
It's becoming a regular thing.
That's right. Cool.
I'm feeling like the Red-Green show. We're in the lodge here.
Yeah, there we are. Cool. Okay, well, we got Blaine the Herb Man and Andrusek. Yeah, this is actually our fourth episode. So if you haven't caught the first three, I mean, you could take them in any order you want. It's not sequential. It's just a nice, good sit down, a chat.
Not really. Yeah.
Yeah, we got some wild wisdom, some storytelling, and yeah, Blaine sharing about his life and the plants and wisdom and knowledge that he's gained over the years. So we had to open it up for questions anytime, all the time. Really appreciate all the comments everyone has shared. Post those down below. Any questions, you can send those to me. We'll post them to Blaine. And one of the ones that came up was regards to COVID and how to, get one's smell back. And I know that's a tough one. I know a lot of people, well, not a lot. There's a couple of people that I know, dealing with that as a challenge. Zinc can help, but it's just one of those things of just hitting it with all you can. And what insights do you have in that regard?
Well, smell is such an important factor. Like when we go all the way back to some of these digs that are like 18,000 years old. One of them was called Shanidar, where we have it from what is now Persia, I think, or Iraq, where somewhere over there. And they found this pre-speech. I don't know how anthropologists make such decisions that these people didn't even have speech yet. But they found this guy buried, and starting pretty much straight out from his waist in a perfect semicircle around his body was an array. They can study the petrified pollen and identify different plants. So he was buried with a bouquet on his chest.
Right.
I can't remember the exact number. It was 12 to 16, 18 or something plants. But there was a pile of each of the species in a perfect half circle around him, and then a collection of all of them on his chest. And, I mean, come up with a better story to assume that this guy was not a healer of some sort.
Right.
I mean, the wind didn't do that. It was a perfect arrangement, right?
Yeah.
And at least half of them were aromatic. Things like yarrow, even. We've been using it that long because, if your buddy just got his chest ripped open by a tiger while you were out hunting, and somebody else crushed up the yarrow and put it on the wound, and it would stop bleeding very quickly, and everybody was, oh wow, watching this, then we'd crush it up, and you could smell it.
Right.
You pass it around the group. And that would be a good way of identifying it in the future if you needed something like that, right?
Right.
So we've been working with smell for a very long time.
What's that connection between smell and memory too, right?
Yes, and it's one of our last, as we get older, it's one of the last senses that we lose.
Right.
Touch can go a little bit, and even though smell is a big part of taste, it's the last one to go, sort of thing.
Right.
And it's a big part of our immune system because there's things like smells more today even than natural in the woods, but things that are toxic. Like if you walk into a room full of ketones or whatever, that's not a good thing for you. You should have a mask on or just get away from here.
Yeah.
So I would think that it's going to come, this is just an assumption, that it's going to come back pretty quick. And we've got one of our best friends for regenerating nerve tissue is lion's mane, which again, if I haven't brought this up already, when I started finding lion's mane, I just wanted to eat it. I didn't know anything about its medicinal properties until a few years ago. And that's the one that I think you brought it up, that if I ran into people on a portage trail, I would tell them it was deadly poison. Don't touch these. Don't let your children even touch these. They're deadly poisonous. Well, how come you can touch them? Well, I have a very special spray I put on my hands because I'm a mycologist and I have it in my pack.
Right.
It was really a spray that I used to sell for hairdressers to put on their hands to protect them from perm solutions.
Right.
So it was a good story. It was factual.
Yeah.
But lion's mane changed a lot of people's view on. It was the first and only thing we've ever had medicinally that would help regenerate even a severed spinal cord. So we were just talking about how until recently, and still, a lot of people don't realize if you have an accident where you've been in a car accident or something like that and have severe spinal damage, it was thought that that was lifelong. And I always like to say, because it's true, I remember one case where in the not far hills, a guy had flipped his quad and he was out with, off-roading and flipped his quad, and he was pinned in such a way that he couldn't move. Like he was pinned by the machine a couple of days before anybody found him. And knowing that dehydration would be a big problem for him, and I just thought this was so brilliant. I wouldn't have thought of this. He had some flagging tape in his shirt pocket, and he was pulling out flagging tape around him, and just the dew with the plastic tape that formed overnight, and then he was sucking the dew off the tape, right? So just to keep the moisture there. So anyway, I'm getting off topic. But I would definitely be taking lion's mane is readily available. You've got it at the store.
Yeah.
And I've never taken it as a supplement. I probably should have been taking it as soon as I had my stroke. Duh. Why wasn't I? Here it is, all this time later. But that's very regenerative. But I think even without supplementation that your smell's going to come back quite quickly. It's just such an important part of our survival.
Mm-hmm. Interesting that you said, of the senses, one of the last that we lose. And, I know as one gets older, one of the, pastimes is to kind of, think about the past and the memories and that smell, connected to memories and trigger things.
There's an old saying that you can tell the age of the chef by the salt of the soup.
Right.
Because older chefs would kind of taste the soup and didn't think the flavors weren't strong enough, so they dumped more salt in.
Right.
And they kept adding more salt. And if you had some old chef, you'd probably have a deathly salty soup.
Right.
Because you couldn't taste it without the salt, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's going to recover quite quickly for you. Whoever asked that, I inherently just believe that.
Yeah, cool. And lion's mane, you were obviously picking the local variety, which is so cool. I mean, it looks like coral reef. You're walking through the forest and just on a like dead log. It's what we call a saprophytic fungi. So it helps consume dead and decaying wood.
Right.
And grow in the same spot of the forest every year until basically it's consumed that. And each year, it's kind of midsummer, it puts out its fruiting body, which is what we know of as the lion's mane mushroom, and it's the most stunning thing you'll see.
Once I got onto it and some of the other corals, I carried a used toothbrush.
Oh yeah.
In my fishing kit, really, camping kit, just for. Because very often when you find them, there might even be mouse poop or something in there, so they're a little hard to clean.
Yeah.
But I would get in there with a toothbrush and get them all cleaned up.
Yeah.
And so nice eating.
Yeah.
And you'll find it on occasion in some of the Chinese supermarkets and things. They'll have it there, fresh. And I don't know, what do you have? What do you have in the store?
And dried as well. But at the store, we have it in extract form, which makes it easy to take. We do have it dried. We've got this medicinal mushroom culinary blend because, of course, lion's mane's a great example of incredible medicinal properties, but also so delicious. Shiitake, maitake,
Yep.
other examples. So we've got this nice little like soup or stock blend of those that one could just throw in. And then otherwise, I think most people take it more supplementally
Right.
in tincture form. We've got capsules or the powder, I think is the best way to go, the best value.
I'm going to get you to set me up
Yeah,
at
totally.
some point here
Yeah.
in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So a lot of the studies, in particular with Alzheimer's, it's a gram a day of the extract, and some people feel it right away. But in this particular study, they took people who are already showing signs of cognitive decline. It was in Japan. I think the age range was like 65 to 80, kind of a thing. And double-blind, placebo-controlled, two groups, one taking the placebo, other group taking the lion's mane, again, a gram. And within 2 weeks, they started to score better on cognitive tests.
Oh.
The group that was taking the lion's mane I think the study went for about 12 weeks, and just that improvement continued. Now, they did note that once they stopped the study, the people stopped taking the lion's mane, and after about 2 or 3 weeks, their improvements had stopped. So it is one of those things, takes a minute to kind of build up, and one that one wants to take regularly. Helps stimulate nerve growth factor.
Yeah.
That's part of what's going on.
I feel blessed that, like the neurologist, I was mentioning this already, that short-term memory was going to suffer.
Right.
But my long-term memory is
it's
excellent.
amazing. Yeah, it really is.
I don't think I'm missing the boat at all.
No.
And now that in the calm environment of just being in the care home, I've got more time to sit and think about things. And when I was working on my book, for example, things were coming back like tastes, smells, and even there'd be times I'd be working on the computer and I could feel textures in my fingertips
Really?
of just different things, like certain barks,
Right.
and things like that.
Yeah.
Just the different sorts of grit.
Right.
There's a beast that they're called ichneumons, and they're a member of the wasp family, and they're really, really scary looking because they have a stinger that looks like that long, and you think, oh my God, that would damn near kill me, right? But it's not a stinger, it's a drilling rig.
Oh, no way.
And the female comes flying up, and you see these things, but you wonder what they are. Nobody knows. There's you see like dead spruce logs in the forest, and there's these round holes, these little round holes in the log. You think, well, it must be some sort of bug.
Yeah.
But these ichneumons come in and they land, and they swing that. They have another big tube in their underbelly, and they swing that out, and they arch their back so that what looks like a stinger flips up, and it's actually a drilling rig. And they, it takes them several minutes.
Yeah.
They drill about that deep into the log, and then the other thing flips up. It's called the ovipositor.
Right.
I mean, these are just things that nobody has time to notice.
Right.
But when you're just sitting there with nothing better to do, you get to witness things like that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Slight sidebar. I used to be just incensed with watching jumping spiders.
Right.
There's these spiders. They're called jumping spiders, and they look like they go to the gym a lot. Like they're these big, muscular, hairy guys.
Yeah.
And they can't produce silk, so they pounce for their food, and you just have like a jumping spider sitting on a log, doing nothing for a very long time. Patient, and a fly comes and lands over here, and nothing happens for several minutes if the fly doesn't move, and then they just pounce on them.
They're on it.
When you're alone in the woods and have more time, you get to witness things like that. Anyway, so the ichneumon drills this big hole, and then she flips the other tube around. The ovipositor goes right to the bottom of the hole, and you can see under her belly that the pump going, and it's like she's filling the drilled hole with eggs.
Right.
In some sort of probably mucus goop. And it's self-sealing when she's finally done, arches her back right up, and then flips that tube all the way around the other way and under her belly again. And the hole is self-sealed because of all of that fluid that the eggs are in, and she flies away, and there's the future.
Right.
You know, and just the things that go on in the woods that normally you just never see because you don't have time.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Ichneumons.
Ichneumons.
Look that one up. ICHN.
Cool.
Like ichneumon. But where was I? Well, just having time
Yeah.
and to be more aware of things, and I'm pretty confident in suggesting that it's not going to be a long while before your smell recovers,
Yeah.
because it's a very, very important organ, and it's so important in our life that I think it'll come back.
Yeah.
Viruses are, I meant to bring this morning, I have a number of electron microscope photographs of different viruses, and there's one, maybe I'll bring them another day. There's one I have that's, I consider the ugliest photograph I've ever seen. It's a photograph of a skin cell, and I'm going to over-exaggerate that it's an 11 by 14 inch picture, but so we got this big pinky orange skin cell, and it's ruptured open, and there's these little blue dots that are spilling out of it, and each one of those is a herpes virus. Okay, so when we have, the way I usually describe it is, if you had somebody with a mess of cold sores all over their face, and you swipe their face with your bare hand, you could rub it on your arm. If you don't have any, that might be trouble right there. If you have perfect skin, you can rub it on your skin and nothing's ever going to happen. But anywhere there's a little scratch or a scrape, they got entry points. And the reason why we so often have the herpes virus, people call it kissing disease or whatever, is that the thin skin around your lips, or for women the other set of lips, is very thin, and little micro adhesion, micro tears or whatever. So it's sexually transmitted either like through kissing or literally sexual engagement, and that's how it gets spread.
Right.
And so you could have, I had one that I picked up from my girlfriend at the time, would occasionally, her ears would break out. And we didn't know anything about herpes at the time, and she equated it to when she was quite young, she frostbit her ears.
Right.
And every once in a while, she had this thing that would come back. It was when she was stressed, and her ears broke out, and probably just snuggling her, watching a movie or something, I had a little shaving cut, and so that's how it entered my body. And every once in a while, if I was stressed, that's where I had a cold sore.
Right.
You know, and we didn't know anything about it at the time, but it's highly contagious. So in this picture, you can just see one skin cell has a gazillion because you got stressed, and it seems from talking to hundreds of patients about this, it's mostly boy-girl stuff.
Right.
Like it can be financial, it can be other things, but it's almost always, like the way I say it, is just, yeah, have a fight with your girlfriend and wake up with a cold sore, you know? And so, and this is the same, there's simplex and zoster. These are the same, it's the same family that is shingles. So when people break out in shingles, it's quite often at my age, there's suddenly empty nesters.
Right.
For women, it's often something with one of the kids or whatever, or their spouse died, or whatever. But you had that virus in your body for all those years since you had chickenpox as a child, but it was held in place by your immune system. And as soon as you get broken down a little bit, especially emotionally, it can come out to play. And that's where that photograph comes in. I always showed it to my clients. It's just the ugliest thing imaginable, because you can see how one cell can explode with thousands of the viruses coming out of it.
Right.
But back on topic, I just think that if the virus has gone into hiding, that disruption of your scent isn't going to take long to come back. I predict that.
Yeah. Cool.
Because smell is so important to us.
Yeah, especially a aromatherapist or a phytotherapist.
Well, one of the interesting things with doing aromatherapy, there's several studies that have been done where having no sense of smell to begin with is called anosmia. Like there's no nosmia, so it's called anosmia is the affliction. And virtually everything that we use oils for still works.
Right.
You have no sense of smell, whatever. Like there's things I might smell for stress, like jasmine's one of my favorites, and no matter how cranky I was from a traffic jam, let's say, I smell some jasmine. I used to keep it under the armrest in my vehicle.
Yeah.
And you're all caught up. I was never one to honk the horn and give somebody the finger or any of that. But if I got caught up and realized I was getting angry, like who wins if I get all upset in a traffic jam? Can I honk my horn or anything like that? Nobody wins, especially me.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Or you grind your teeth or
Yeah.
whatever, your blood pressure goes up. So I would smell that jasmine and just immediately get a big smile on my face, and I'm getting happy just thinking about it.
Totally.
And instead of being all cranky, I'd kind of almost drug-like. Yeah, see, I don't even need the jasmine anymore. It's taking me there. If I ever get out of this traffic jam, I'm going to go find another one and forget about that meeting I missed. Oh, well, and so...
yeah, and you think about what's contained in just...
Yep. And so it was a tool that I needed for a while, and maybe I don't need it anymore. But... things like that were working for people with no sense of smell.
Right. Even though they couldn't smell it,
They're
still
cranky.
getting that same...
They use it, or just things like lavender to calm down a little bit.
Yeah.
So I found that pretty...
That's fascinating. Fascinating.
Amazing.
So, yeah. So for those that are watching that are having challenge with their smell, it's still having an effect regardless.
It still works.
Yeah. One of my favorites, like you mentioned, jasmine, is poplar buds, the balm of Gilead.
Yeah. Yep.
Carrying a little tin or a jar of that around. If I'm ever kind of, like you say, stressful or in a situation where I feel a little disconnected, I'm in depths of the city, just pull that out and it just instantly connects you to the forest.
Yep.
To springtime. It's a beautiful thing.
Like you don't really... Well, I used to always worry about my leather steering wheel. I didn't want to get the rosin on it.
Oh, yeah.
But so I'd clean my fingers before driving. But when you've been picking for a couple of hours, your fingers are all rosinous. You really don't want to ever clean them.
No.
I get that with when I'm cooking at home. Rosemary that you buy in a store, even fresh, or if you grow it inside the house in your kitchen window, it just doesn't have the punch that it has when it's outside in the sun. The photons that come from the sun have to hit that. And it's so rosinous. And what I like to do if I'm making a seafood dish is hold maybe the tip of if I break a whole branch off and just run my fingers down it to get all the leaves off, chop them or not. I would use that even in a bowl of popcorn. And then for the whole rest of the day, I don't want to wash my hand. Because you got that sticky rosin from the rosemary on it.
Oh, it's intoxicating.
Yeah. That just took me to a whole other topic when some years ago I didn't have any symptoms, but I just decided to do a parasite cleanse. And a day or two into it, I thought, wow, look at those guys. I was kind of looking in the toilet after a poo, and I thought I had some pretty interesting worms about this big, and was looking at them really closely. And I finally realized, no, those are the rosemary leaves from the popcorn 2 nights ago. And with the stomach acids and everything, they got all bleached out.
Right.
So they were just white and had a bit of texture to them. But what a disgusting segue that was. But yeah, parasites.
Yeah. Yeah. How important do you think it is for people to do a parasite cleanse? I know some people are like super dialed in, they got their regular routine once a year. Or is it really just one of those things like, oh, if you're traveling or if you have a pet, you might be more susceptible? What's your perception on parasites and doing
Well,
cleanses
I,
like
I
that?
used to do one every year because I thought I drink a lot of spring water and lake water. Like I'm going to be going home for a week twice in July for fishing and stuff. And it makes me proud to be a Canadian that wherever we're fishing, I will be able to take a cup and dip it in the lake and drink the water.
Yeah, amazing.
That's something that's almost lost on the planet.
Yeah, it's true.
To be able to do that. But when you go out onto a little point on some of the rivers I've camped on up there with a powerful flashlight, and you shine it at nighttime out into the water, and you just see all these eyeballs and little creepy things in the water, and you kind of think twice about just going down to the bay and brushing your teeth and drinking the water anymore. But because I eat a lot of wild plants raw, like I was talking about wood lilies, and how I just go pick flowers and eat them, and then the water thing, I thought it would probably be a good idea to do a parasite cleanse.
Right.
And I've never had issues like people have had tapeworms. If you've never seen one, if you're familiar with Christmas cactus, we call them, that's exactly what a tapeworm looks like. They grow one section at a time, and they have little hooks on the
Right.
bottom that they latch on to the intestine with, and they just sit there with their mouth open, and the food comes to them. They just latch on for a while. So people have been found with, some really long ones, several feet long.
Yeah.
And what I find interesting is we've had patients where, they probably got thrown out when my brother and his wife were cleaning my kitchen because some of them didn't even have labels on them. But I had samples that patients had brought me. This one woman had like an empty spice jar, I suppose, that was full of eggs about a half centimeter to a centimeter, millimeter, a millimeter sized eggs, all these yellow eggs. And she was passing worms, like half a cup full of worms,
Jeez.
in one bowel movement, and yet had taken these things to the physician, and they ran tests in the lab and said, no, you don't have any parasites. And we were thinking, like, I don't want to meet the mother of whoever's living in this woman's body passing that many eggs.
Right.
And, so there's this monster in her body, and some of the bigger parasites we get, like, are they so busy looking under a microscope that a worm that long crawled right by them on the table, and jumped
Right.
off the table down, like, what are they looking for? I've never found that out.
Yeah.
I need to meet somebody who does that sort of work and just ask them that bluntly, because,
Yeah.
man, we've had some doozies. And I remember this one young lady who came to see me with her mother, and she'd gone through a few batches of, she'd do a parasite cleanse and then be off it. And because of eggs that were probably encrusted in her intestinal wall, she'd get sick again. And I had seen her, very attractive young blonde girl, and on one of the times I saw her, she was absolutely a rake. You could almost see her ribs, through her skin, kind of thing. And I had nightmares about that girl. And one of them was I ran into her and her mother on the street downtown, and she tripped on a rainy day. She tripped and fell down, and must have hurt her. And like, it's a dream. Her belly bad enough, and all of these creatures came running out of her belly and ran into the sewer.
Right.
Right? Just because they had a couple of really interesting creatures that were about this big. Some of them looked like squid, And as I talked to them, they were saying, "Oh, remember those ones, Mom, that looked like like literally squid, seaweed, like sea creatures and things." And again, they were told that she didn't have any parasites,
Right.
and they had jars full of them.
Wow.
So, but yeah, depending on your overall lifestyle, I think doing a cleanse once a year. I find the easiest time to do something like the Candida diet, for example, is after Christmas.
Right.
Because other than Valentine's Day, there's a long stretch of time there where there's not much happening.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I don't want to do a cleanse like that in the middle of summertime where you're, having throw another shrimp on the Barbie and just all sorts of things that you shouldn't eat on a Candida diet.
Abundance of fruits and berries.
It's suffrage, but there's that stretch in the middle of winter where living on whole grains and soups and stews and things sits well. It's not hard to do at that time of year.
Well, what are some of your favorite herbs for working with parasites?
Well, if we go, there's all sizes, right?
Right.
So some years ago, I came up with a tincture blend that I just called Para 7 because it had 7 ingredients in it. And they were all, it wasn't some secret blend, it really common known things.
Right.
Like
Your black walnut.
one of the most common ones for the big worms, like tapeworms, is Artemisia frigida.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that the other day where we have this association that because, if you've got big worms and you go for a squat in the woods or in the grass and you can see things crawling in your stool, those are like demons. They're like snakes living in your body. So we come up with this association that what protects us from real, you can see them, demons, might help protect us from the demons we can't see.
Right.
And that's hence smudging, and we covered this the other day. But pinworms, are a different story, and a lot of children have pinworms because of all the thumb sucking and things that they do and playing in the sandbox, and
Right.
you don't have to literally eat dirt. Like, I think, depending on where you are, I really appreciated being a regular in the dog park, for example, that some parents would, if a dog ran up to their baby in a carriage and started licking the baby's face, they would absolutely freak out. And
Right.
then some other parent would say, no, that's the best thing that can happen to your child is letting a dog lick their face because it's one of the best things for your immune system, that they're exposed to. Dogs' mouths are very clean, ours aren't.
Right.
You should almost take your baby out of the stroller to let the dog lick its face, kind of thing. And because they build up a resistance to so many things, right? From the dog's bacteria antibiotics and things that they just have in their saliva.
Yeah.
But so there were things for the little worms, even just stuff like clove, and because of the overall mix, that tincture didn't taste bad at all. And I had one kind of an unusual story where a woman had called me from somewhere, Crow's Nest Pass area, where she'd bought a new calf at an auction or something, and in the it's not what do we call a corral, whatever. Anyway, where these animals were, and they poop, and then you're walking around in the poop and all that sort of thing. She almost lost. Well, she did lose several animals, and the vets weren't figuring out anything to help her. And it was all traced back to this calf that she bought. It's sort of like buying a new plant and you don't examine it really closely.
Right.
Like there's been times where I've been looking for another orchid in the store. I remember once, and I'm going to say it was at Costco, when I went to find somebody and said, who's in charge of the plant department here? Because half of these plants have mealybugs on them. And somebody's going to bring them home. And like for me, I have corners where there's 22 plants, and you bring home a new infected plant, and pretty soon the whole corner's sick, So she lost several animals, and nobody was figuring this out, and somebody suggested my tincture. So she got me on the phone and bought a couple of liters of it, and it solved the problem. I got a card from her later thanking me that, according to her, I saved her herd.
Wow.
With just a simple little,
Yeah.
no magic, well-known parasite herbs. So, and candida, now we're getting on to another topic, but candidiasis, as far as I'm concerned, is a pandemic, really.
Right.
It's so common. There's so many different symptoms, even just being run down a lot, can be from the overconsumption of processed foods, simple sugars, and that sort of thing that we just take for granted.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just live that way.
For sure. It's a vicious cycle because the candidas eat more sugar.
Yeah.
Go for that.
And it's, yes, until you fully get your head around that, it's hard to accept that you can have things living in your body that can affect your thoughts and make you crave certain things that they want to eat, and that they're mind controlling you that way. It's creepy, but it's real.
Yeah.
And there's so many associated health risks that, it's been a couple of years now that I'm in a home and so forth, but I would always do that right after the holiday season.
Right.
I don't want to be on a candida diet during Christmas season where you're eating cookies and all sorts of things, right? Don't suffer that way. Just go on it right after New Year's kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
talking about organisms that can infect you and take over your consciousness. A lot of people, kind of more in the broader mainstream, have become aware of cordyceps mushroom, which is often described as like a zombie fungus, from a TV show that they filmed the first season here called The Last of Us. I never watched it, but people like it and they talk about it and this kind of thing. And
I think I saw an episode or two.
Yeah, cordyceps kind of on a center stage, and
right.
In the film, my understanding is it infects humans and turns them into zombies, and people are all scared of cordyceps, and of course, Denis makes this comment. He's like, well, it's not cordyceps that infects us and turns us into zombies; it's candida. That's the fungus that we watch out for.
I would always bring up, because I think everybody's seen how tree roots can break a foundation of a garage pad or your house or a sidewalk or whatever, as roots will find little cracks and then grow through them, and then they get bigger and that sort of thing. And candida, its mycelium, can work their way right through the intestinal wall.
Oh, really?
And that's the whole cause of leaky gut syndrome, we call it, right? Mm-hmm. So it used to be a nice wall that all your poop went down, but now there's cracks in it.
Right.
And all sorts of things can leak out of your gut. And that's why we call it leaky gut syndrome, and cause all sorts of lung problems, skin problems, because you've got toxins that should have gone in the toilet, but they're coming out of other systems instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's creepy.
Yeah, autoimmune. So, yeah, fortunately, there's a lot of protocols out there to try and, do what they call heal and seal the gut back up. And meat stock is apparently fantastic for that. Very high glutamine content. That helps with that.
Like doing bone broths and things?
Yeah, different than bone broths, actually. So bone broth, would be using primarily bones. You can throw whatever else you want in it, and generally it's for a longer brew. Whereas a meat stock, it's primarily more meat than it is bones.
Oh, okay.
And it's a lower temperature in a shorter amount of time, and produces more of the kind of the healing compounds for the gut.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a new one on me.
Yeah. No, I learned that from Lucas Simmons and a couple other folks that are really focused on gut health, because so much of what can go wrong in our bodies, like you say, is rooted in the gut.
Well, we have a slight shift again. Not that I'm one to segue, but most people don't realize that things like if you go out for sushi, and some people like it, some people just can't handle it at all, but the green wasabi, which is the
Right.
strongest horseradish that we can get.
Yeah.
This comes, now I'm leading into bad food combinations.
Right.
But when do we have things like mustard on a hot dog, on a burger, horseradish on a piece of a nice rib roast or something like that?
Yeah.
And the mustard family, all of them stimulate the parietal cells in your stomach lining to raise your acid levels and pepsinogen levels to the point where if you have enough acid in your stomach, you could literally have a bowl of live tapeworms for supper.
Right.
And they're not going anywhere because almost like holy water, when the worms go into those high acid levels, they're like a zombie or whatever. They're just going to explode. And so that is the reason for using, like, horseradish is stronger than regular yellow mustard.
Right.
And wasabi is that much stronger than horseradish. It's the king of the horseradishes.
Yeah.
So what you should really do when you're going out, especially if you like sashimi, as opposed to just rice rolls and things like that, is you should actually start taking your 5G, I think, or chopsticks. Do I have that right? 5G?
I don't know.
So take a few, dip your chopsticks in the wasabi, and just suck on that for a good 15 minutes while you're chatting before you get into the raw fish,
Right.
because it's going to raise the acid levels, and then you digest it thoroughly, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So a lot of things that we look at, back to herbs and spices in your kitchen, a lot of things were used. I will typically say, because I honestly believe it, that every recipe, any traditional recipe, from, I was talking about Asian food to Ukrainian food, any recipe from anywhere, Greek food, anywhere in the world, there's something rather wrong with all of the food that's available there. Like if you eat too much spinach, you're going to get kidney stones.
Right.
But all you have to do is have parsley with it every time, and the parsley makes your kidneys work a little harder. Doesn't hurt them or anything, just a little more efficiently. And all of the excess, I think it's oxalic acid that builds up, and you get kidney stones. But if the parsley's there, you're okay. So when you look at recipes, like carbohydrates and protein together are bad, so spaghetti and meatballs is a bad thing. But what do we put with it all the time? Oregano,
Right.
which is an antibiotic. So, the fermentation and et cetera that happens, it's bad for you. When you have something like a ham sandwich, the herbs we associate with that meal make it work.
Right.
And that goes all over the world.
Yeah.
A lot of my students over the years have heard me say that usually where there's a problem, including a poisonous spider we talked about, there's usually a solution within about 10 feet. And you find things that you can eat in the bush. If there's a problem with them, there's something within 10 feet. There's a plant, it's an impatience, or what people would say impatience. It's always hard to convince people that there are no soft sounds in Latin.
Right.
So that we say echinacea, it should be echinacea.
Interesting.
Like C's are actually a K sound, so we slur it in our anglicizing of, like we do with everything. There's a plant that has either bright canary yellow flowers or sort of a mottled orange flower, and they grow. They would get about as high as I'm holding my hand from the floor, and these flowers are really, really bright, and they are a 100% quick-working antidote to poison ivy, which is small and on the ground in these little bright green leaves that you would never notice. So you might get all involved with poison ivy and be blistering and so forth and not know anything about this impatience, is how it should be said, impatience plant. But if I'm walking in the woods and see the impatience flowers, I'm instantly watching out for the poison ivy.
Right. Where is
because
it?
the bright colors told me, because they're always within 3 feet of each other.
Right.
We've used the word indicator a lot of times,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
But you
Yeah.
don't have to be impatient with impatience. It works right away.
It works right away. And stinging nettles, of course, they're their own antidote.
Right.
A lot of people don't realize that if you've gotten into, well, nettles aren't usually that bad and it doesn't last that long, but if you're rolling around in this stuff, like I've had, I used to say, if you want to find, like, they're so nutritious, nettles. And I always say, if you want to find some nettles for supper tomorrow, just let me put a tent up in the dark.
Right.
Because I'll usually put the tent up right in the middle of a nettles patch, and then you're crawling in and out of your tent, right? And but they're so nutritious for you. You can do just about anything with them. Well, for example, if you, just to get them ready for any work in the kitchen or to put them in a smoothie, if you just put the nettles in a colander and pour a kettle full of boiling water over them, the boiling water knocks all of the leaves, or the little needles. The little needles actually have formic acid in them, and so each one is like a little ant sting. So anyway.
Yeah, it's like a hypodermic needle. Like it injects it right into you. Yeah,
and so you get rid of the needles, and then you can do anything like an omelet, lasagna, things like that, and it's just so nutritious. There's almost nothing in the world that has as many nutrients, vitamins and minerals, and what do? We avoid it. But it's also a really good indicator because it likes really good, rich, loamy soil. So at times along banks, I've seen nettles as high as 9 feet.
Wow.
And you know that, man, this is where I should be growing other things. So if you've bought a property, an acreage or something like that, and you find a couple places where there's nettles growing, don't destroy them. That's the best dirt you own. That's where your garden should go.
Yeah.
Or if not, make one, or just grow flowers there or something.
Yeah.
You know.
So what were you saying about how nettles can kind of help cure the sting? I took a group out last week and we found nettles, and one of them wanted to try, because I was demonstrating. I kind of like the sensation of nettles. It's a therapy, right? Urtication. People
Maybe for you.
people will sting, like joints.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Help
right.
with.
Oh yes, they whip joints. That's right. That's an old European thing.
Right.
To you got a really bad arthritic arm or leg or something. You would. Urtification. I'd forgotten. Sorry. And you literally flog yourself with a bunch of the branches.
Yeah. Or Denise says there was apparently an ancient practice where men would take it to their genitals too to increase sensation and swelling and so on and so forth.
That's a form of kinky I can do without. But
so yeah, the remedy to kind of reduce that, and she's like, well, okay, now that I felt it, right, like I'm good.
Just get some hot, make a cup of tea.
Oh, okay.
They are 100% their own antidote.
Right. Now, would chewing the leaf, if you folded it very carefully and kind of juiced it in your mouth, and then would that do the same?
You could make that. We call that a spit poultice.
Yeah. And I know you can do that with like plantain, and there's a couple other plants.
Plantain would help too. It's what we call a drawing agent.
Right.
You could put it on a wound that had gotten to the point of being infected and was pussy, or you're getting a real bad rash or something, and a crushed up plantain poultice pulls things out of the body.
Yeah.
But still on nettles, something I like to do on Herbox is you very carefully pick some nice big leaves off a nettle plant, and you roll it up carefully with the hairs are all on the top side, I think, and then they're on the main stem a lot. But you roll the leaf up with the hairy side on the inside, and then eat it like a little miniature cabbage roll, and it tastes exactly like English cucumber.
Right.
And which surprises a lot of people, and you rolled all the hairs up so you don't get any on your lips or whatever. And the inside of your mouth, I don't think, would react, because the inside of our mouths is meant to handle a lot of stupid things.
Yeah.
Very acidic foods and whatnot.
Yeah, a whole range. And then coming back to spice, not a lot of people know that horseradish grows around here. I don't think it's native. It must be an introduced species.
Brought over by Europeans, yep.
Yeah.
Your great-grandpa probably had a root in his hip pocket. And you could probably for people that think they can't garden, there's two things I recommend they try.
I know.
Horseradish and comfrey.
Yeah, and rhubarb, the third one.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
So horseradish was just so important in digesting meat. And a lot of times in the woods, if I find an old trapper's cabin somewhere, there's always horseradish growing there. I like it when I find it in the city at times, growing where, like wild, I guess, in the city.
Yeah, feral.
It's fun to just look up, like our prevailing winds are mostly westerly, right?
Yeah.
Out of the west and a little bit north. And so when you find something growing someplace where it shouldn't be, look up to that direction and kind of go, it's the pink house.
Right.
And then if you can get up and walk up the alley or whatever, you'll see the horseradish there.
Right.
And the seeds blew down the hill, and now they're here now.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I found it in a lot of alleys and parks and stuff in the city.
Yeah.
But that's one that I can remember my mother with literally tearing eyes, hand grinding it with an old grinder, like before we had Vitamixes and things like that, right? They used to have these grinders that clamped onto the edge of your kitchen table and you could grind stuff up. And one of the things she did with it that I really enjoyed as a kid, because straight up horseradish was too strong for me, but she would mix it with pickled beets.
Oh, interesting.
She'd can that together. Mm-hmm. And we would have big spoonfuls of that with just something like spaghetti and meatballs.
Right.
And once again, that was an intelligent thing to do because the horseradish was helping with the meatballs.
Right. And what about the leaves? Anytime I've tasted the leaf, it is very similar to the root.
Yeah, some people, I've never done this, but some people put it in when they're pickling.
Oh, yes.
Even
I've
dill
heard
pickles.
That. Yeah, that's right.
I haven't done that, but I've heard about people doing that.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that I had to go, I knew where there was some growing up the alley, and it's another thing that I put a whole lot of effort into making a batch of that. There's whole books about, what's it called, fire cider.
Yeah.
And I made a batch of that, and it took me quite a bit of work to, I actually dug up some roots, not just for what I was making, but I knew that they were beside a parking lot up an alley 2 blocks from my house, so nobody's going to use these, and I dug them up to put some in my garden. I used to have a big plant, probably got the root from my mother, and one of the neighbors was putting in a new fence and dug it up to put a post right where the horseradish was. I wasn't around to move the roots, kind of thing, so I lost that one. But yeah, you could have a horseradish root in the trunk of your car for 3 years and find it and plant it, and it's going to come up.
No way.
And back to comfrey, I remember there were some friends of mine that would save the comfrey in their backyard, just knowing I would harvest it, because otherwise they'd get rid of it. You got to be careful, because it'll really take over a whole. It'll root deep and take over a whole corner of your yard.
I was going to say, you can't really get rid of that.
Yeah.
But
there was, I was delivering an order to a woman somewhere in South Calgary back to my beauty supply days, and she had a home business, and I was dropping an order off for her and noticed some comfrey in the back corner of their yard. And I said, "Oh, you got some comfrey growing there. Do you harvest that for anything?" You can do anything good with that? My husband's been trying to get rid of that thing for 9 years. He almost burned the garage down one day. He got so frustrated, he poured gas in the hole. He dug it all up and poured gas in the hole. Big explosion. Yeah, so I always tell people if they're going to do comfrey in a small yard to put some at least 9-inch, like frankly, a 5-gallon pail. The best way of cutting plastic like that, by the way, is if you're doing vinyl siding or something, is you use a plywood blade in a skill saw backwards. And it'll go through, because a regular blade, it chips and cracks and stuff, siding, so you put a plywood blade in your skill saw backwards, and it just cuts like a knife through butter.
Wow.
Anyway, that would be a good way to have a little bit of comfrey in a corner.
Right.
Because that's about how deep they need to be.
Yeah.
I had some in my yard that was growing in a contained space alongside one of my decks. And one spring, my deck was just kind of rotten enough. I decided this is the year I'm going to replace the whole deck. So when the comfrey started coming up, we were working on the deck, and so we were walking back and forth on the little babies coming up. And so it just jumped the fence. It all started growing up in the neighbor's yard.
Right.
And she was kind enough to, again, let me leave it growing there. We'd tie it up and let it there, but it kind of took over part of her yard. But anyway, yeah, I would always harvest. Anyway, the point of that whole story was I had a friend with me that, yet again, somebody I met as a student, and we'd gone over there to harvest the comfrey, and I had the whole back of the Forerunner was full of it, and I like to make a very concentrated gel out of it to use for wounds and cuts and things, and with some oils added too. And I call it superplanetary wound gel because I've got things from every continent in it.
Right.
You know, like lavender from France, and the comfrey comes to us originally from Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And so Kim was his name. Kim was looking at the owner of the property saying, wow, is it hard to grow? And the owner, Peter, looked at me and said, like, who's the new kid? You know, because like, what are you, stupid? You know, and he took a piece of root. He literally just used his boot heel to slam some root out, like a chunk of root, and walked across the alley and used his boot heel again to dig a bit of a hole with some out of the gravel, and then stomped it into the gravel, and just quite confidently looked at him and said, come back next year.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and sure enough, there's, you know, this big mound of the comfrey growing.
Yeah.
But my favorite thing, if you have comfrey around, my favorite thing to do with is, well, for starters, we didn't know better when I originally grew comfrey, and it gets about this high, falls all over the place, and knocks over other plants and stuff. You have to stake it. And the allantoin, which is one of the things that it's a cell proliferant that's in comfrey. There's several reasons it works for wounds. One of them is it's got a lot of tannins.
Right.
But the allantoin is a cell proliferant. That's important. And the allantoin content is way higher in the younger leaves.
Oh, interesting.
So you're far better off to let it get about 20 inches high, and just it's got so much chi that you can cut it right to the ground.
Yeah.
3-4 times a summer.
Right.
And make more small batches.
Yeah.
So instead of letting it big and get annoying, it's far better to use the younger leaves. So cut it right down at least twice a summer.
Yeah.
And I chop it up and put it on low heat to simmer it for a while. Just let it simmer on the stove all afternoon, because high heat destroys allantoin. Like, you don't want to boil it or anything. And then strain it off and squeeze everything. I just use a steel strainer, like a tea strainer, with a potato masher, and get everything I can off it, and then can it. Take it hot right off the stove and can it. And then once this is simply for cosmetic reasons, when you let it sit for quite a while, it'll settle, sort of like decanting wine or whatever, where it'll end up crystal clear, real dark brown, like soya sauce.
Right.
I make it very strong. It looks like soya sauce with some silt at the bottom. So I'll decant that, just so when I use, what do I use for that? And where do I get it? I don't know. I get it somewhere. That you, it's kind of like making pudding, where you want to stir the powder in when it's cold. So you take a pot and the stuff that looks like soya sauce, put the powder in, stir it up, and then heat the stove up. And it only takes about 10 minutes for it to turn into a gel. The first time I used it, I overused it, and we were having so much fun in the kitchen, we were laughing about the whole thing. I literally held the pot over my head with a spoon in it and shook it, and the spoon didn't come out. It was that
Wow.
thick of a gel. So use a little less of the white powder next time.
Right.
And then right away I mix it with a nice organic aloe vera, and it's still a clear product at that point because the aloe was clear and the comfrey was clear, dark brown, and then we add a few essential oils to it, and that's just so nice on. You get a lot of scrapes where you don't even need to bandage, or if it's a severe cut, you might put it on the bandage and put it on or whatever. But I've had a lot of people really like that little formula.
Yeah.
Super planetary wound gel.
Yeah, comfrey. It is the the herbalist friend, as well as people that are into permaculture. The idea of chop and drop and using it as a mulch, because like you say, it's so proliferous. It just grows. You chop it, use it as a mulch, or I like your recipe as well.
Well, when I pressed it off, like I was saying, that part of the process, that all went into my compost for sure.
Right. Yeah.
And at that point, it's not going to come up because it's well cooked.
Yeah.
So lots of good. I mean, you could just take it out and throw it all over your yard, for that matter.
Yeah.
It's already not composted, but
right. So topically, cuts, scrapes. I know there's controversy around whether to take comfrey internally or not.
well, and validly so. There's a group of chemicals called pyrrolizidine alkaloids, and the work was finally done to show that where the problem comes in is that it's not just comfrey. There's a lot of plants that have these pyrrolizidine alkaloids, and there's sort of an open ring structure that attaches to other things in your body that makes it toxic. But a comfrey can be tested, and the plants that I got came from, can I remember his name anymore? He was one of Calgary's longest running naturopathic doctors for years. Skagen, Dr. Skagen, had the plants in his yard tested as being pyrrolizidine free.
Really?
And that's
Okay.
where I got my original roots from. And it's the pyrrolizidine alkaloids pretty much are only in the roots. And so if people were making respiratory blends or whatever with ground root with the wrong type of comfrey, that's where that concern was.
Right.
But I always made my gel was made from the leaves only, and the pyrrolizidines aren't in the leaves.
Only in
I'm
the
glad you brought that up. Now
Yeah.
we're doing the whole comfrey story. But yeah, good that you mentioned that, because it's not controversial. It's true.
Right.
But we got that one figured out.
Yeah.
So you can have something with an NPN on the shelf in a health food store that'll literally say pyrrolizidine free.
Right. Yeah.
And they ran the tests, and
Another name for comfrey is knit bone. Is that correct?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. To use as a compress after falling off a horse or something, you got some bruised ribs or even a couple of cracked ones.
Yeah.
To put it on as a bandage, again, a poultice, right?
And would that be leaf again, or you do root?
I would just do what I do with leaves
Yeah.
on that. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
But back to where we segued.
Yeah.
Two things to grow if you think you can't garden:
Yeah.
horseradish and comfrey.
And I'll throw in rhubarb.
Rhubarb.
Old reliables, they just come up every year without fail. You can ignore them. I hadn't heard about 3 years in the back of your trunk and still living. But, that might take the cake. on
Hard
that
to
one.
get rid of.
Yeah.
But like I said, if you're going to grow some comfrey or get a root from somebody that's got a bunch, I have an old friend. He was, well, I think he's still out there with some land on the. I'm forgetting my southern rivers. I know the Ghost in that whole area, but he was living on some land. That strip between uh, south of Calgary and further south than Okotoks and get to High River.
Right.
And that area, he's out there, so I forget what river it is that winds through there. Really beautiful piece of land. And I don't know if he introduced it or not, but you could probably fill a dump truck with comfrey out there without even noticing anything's missing.
Right.
So
Wow.
he'd be somebody to look up and go get some roots from.
Yeah. A friend of mine sent me some comfrey roots that are kind of spreading as well. She said it would stay self-contained.
Really?
Yeah.
That's some kind of voodoo magic, I think.
Well, she is a bit of a witch, that one.
That helps sometimes.
For sure. And of course, what is a witch, right? You know, other than one who kind of has a connection and a command of plants and a perception of,
Everybody should have a good witch in their pocket.
right?
In the old days, like throughout Europe, every king or lesser status people always had a pet witch
Right.
to help know what their neighbors were doing, like the old crystal ball thing, and
Yeah.
people that would fought bitterly, always people like the French and the British kind of thing. They always wanted to know what the other were doing, and everybody had their pet witch,
Right.
both for healing,
Yeah.
okay,
And
but for seeing things.
right. Well, I was going to say too, also for coming up with, deadly concoctions, poisons, that type of thing.
If there's somebody you really had to take out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so unfortunate that so many witches were burned at the stake for inappropriate reasons. We had, now here's another whole topic I'm switching to. There's a type of fungus called ergots. It's a whole group.
Yeah.
And there's an ergot that grows on wild rye, and it has LSD in it, literally.
Yeah.
And at times when people, like we still do today, sort of communes and whatnot, cooperatives, where maybe for the winter a village would kind of share their grains to make cereal blends and things, and only one person's farm had this ergot growing in their wild rye, but it ended up in their cereal blend.
Right.
And so pretty soon, like there'd be people, literally hallucinating that they were being attacked by insects or whatever. And whole towns would be higher than a kite
Yeah.
off the bread they were eating,
Right.
right? And so there's that old Nancy woman there, she lives out in that little house up by the swamps there, and remember when we put too much in the wagon that morning and the axle broke little Jimmy's back, that he never would have walked again. But we had her come into town, she put, they call a poultice on his legs, and he's out there playing frisbee now, so in times of trouble, sometimes the witch was summoned. But if there was a plague going on, it must be somebody made her, old Nancy there, she's angry, she put a spell on the village.
Yeah.
We better drag her in and burn her, And a lot of that happened over this ergot
Right.
before anybody figured it out. So when you got I was just channel surfing one night, and I caught this program, and like I was just glued to it, where somebody had gone through records of weather and correlated it with all of the times where there was a trial for vampirism or werewolf.
Right.
And the summers where there was a lot of damp weather and whatever, which would promote the growth of this fungus, all coincided with these trials. All right, because, well, old Mike there, I thought he was a pretty good neighbor, but he went out elk hunting, and of course, the only reason we could see him go by was because the moon's full. He's been on, and he hasn't shaved for 2 weeks. He's been in the bush, so he's coming by one night with half a dead elk laying over. She's all bloody, and he's all hairy, and yeah, he must be one of them damn werewolves. You know, we better burn him too.
Right.
And it's because they were higher than a kite.
Yeah.
You know, watching their neighbor come home
Yeah.
just from a hunting trip, and misinterpreted what they saw.
Yeah.
You know, because they were hallucinating.
Totally.
So, yeah, a lot of history,
In the church feared, you
and
know.
it's here.
Yeah.
I had some again. It might have gotten thrown out with my house getting cleaned up. I don't know, but
You had some ergot.
I had some. Yeah, I had some that I saved just for show and tell.
Right.
And they were in a little vase up above the stereo there that it probably got tossed. I don't know. I'm not thinking I'll see it again. No big deal. But I saved some. Just a few times I'd be out in the foothills and find some
Right.
wild rye, and the growths. It will look almost like a miniature version of a cattail thing. So like chocolate brown to black, and about that long, and maybe this thick, just growing right up on the flower
Right. Okay.
stalks.
Yeah.
If you ever see any.
Did you try it?
No, I didn't. There wasn't a lot,
Right.
and I have no idea about dosage or anything, or I might have.
Yeah. Who knows, right? Could be a microdose. Could be a hero's dose, and you off.
Yeah, I know. I never did. I just saved it for show and tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah. There's a lot of interesting plants out there. What's the one I was going to talk about. It grows wild all around here.
not a mushroom?
Henbane.
Oh,
Yeah, henbane. This is one of the things that was used in the witch's flying
oh yes,
ointment.
yeah.
Yeah, that produced psychoactive effects.
Well, and this is, a lot of people find this funny, but some of the, henbane would probably be one of them, some of the plants that witches would have used for seeing, as a seer under contract to the king kind of thing, were taken orally, and if you took a strong enough oral dose, it was actually lethal. But what they would often do is grind the herb up and insert it either vaginally or rectally as a bolus.
Right.
And then it was absorbed at a slower rate,
Yeah.
and they wouldn't die, but they were flying. So you got, there's old Nancy the witch, and she's at her kitchen table, and she's just crammed a bunch of stuff up her backside, and then just, I mean, her eyes are in the back of her head, and she's completely hallucinating, and we come and drop in for tea to see her, and there she is at the kitchen table, and she's flying
Yeah.
on her broom,
Right. Yeah.
but the flying was just in her head, not in the sky.
Yeah.
So that's where the whole flying, witches flying on brooms came from.
Right. Yeah. Use it as
Psychedelics.
Yeah.
Crazy, eh?
Yeah.
Not like Harry Potter movies at all.
So I assume you haven't tried that one either. The
No.
witch's flying ointment.
No.
Applied.
No, no flying. I'll stick to 737s. Small planes. I had a balloon ride once. I think it was my 40th birthday. My father-in-law at the time bought me a balloon ride ticket.
Oh, yeah.
I would do that again in a blink.
Right.
The only annoying thing was that sometimes you're booked for a certain day, but they call you at 5 in the morning and say, no, it's going to be too windy, so you can't go. I think that happened about 3 times
Yeah.
before. But I had the flight was, it was fall when all the leaf colors were out, and the flight was from somewhere, it was a site they used a lot, somewhere probably around where, southwest of the city. Yeah, where they would start up from, and then you would fly right through the city. I think we actually flew right over my house.
Oh, cool.
When I had the old house in Lower Mount Royal with the teepee in it, and everyone flew right over the house.
Yeah.
And then you come down somewhere by the airport, and they'll have a little picnic basket and a glass of wine for you, and whatever. I would do that again in a blink. Now that was really nice.
You don't really see that too often these days anymore.
I don't know why.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Yeah.
Like we used to have a lot of them.
Yeah,
you're
totally.
right. I never even thought of that.
Yeah.
And there was a club, and there'd be a lot of them around in the summer, like especially around Stampede time. There'd be.
Yeah, totally.
Where'd all the balloons go?
Hardly ever see a balloon these days.
The only thing was, like, what was so cool about them was that you were floating, other than the occasional to keep the balloon full, you know? You'd be just, it's sort of like sailing when you're in maybe 9-foot waves and you're just running with the wind, where you're right with the wind, full sails, and you're not doing any tacking or anything. So you're just surfing, and with these just big rollers. I've been out I remember looking at my good friend and like, are we okay here? Oh yeah, this is as good as it gets. You know, it's always nice to be out with people that really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like I still have a dear friend who lives in Whistler, a helicopter pilot, and quite often if I was going to be visiting for a while, he'd find some way to sneak me in for a free flight. Like there'd be something going on where he could sneak me in. There are times I spent a whole day with him. He was doing what are they called? They're people who camp in extreme places, and they have total no trace etiquette. Like they literally fly in huge amounts of moss to use for their toiletry and stuff, and they like there's literally nothing when they're the Sierra Club maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
And so he had a big group of people, and he knew I could handle gear, and so I was his ground person, where we would put big mats of equipment folded up with a big closure, and then he'd come in and hover, and I would take the hook for him to take the next load. So each time he would take 4 people and a load of equipment.
Right.
And I'd be the ground man, and then afterwards he took me for a flight, and we'd go zoom around the neighborhood and stuff. Yeah. And there was one occasion, I'll never forget this, because I didn't know helicopters could even go that high. It was my best thing of the year. Like we were halfway to the moon, I think, and we were way up. And he's such an experienced pilot. He's won lots of awards and stuff like that. He's done like stunt scenes for James Bond movies and all sorts of things like that, where we were way up, and he was just sitting there with the map out. He wasn't even holding on to anything, I don't think, and he was showing me where we were on the map, and like Japan's right over there,
Yeah.
and that was my biggest thrill of the year.
Cool.
So I kind of miss that. He's probably retired now. I'm thinking he's a couple years older than I am, and pilots are tested regularly for health and sight and things like that, right? He's probably done now. I think his last couple of years he got to do these contracts where he was the live on board pilot for exceedingly rich people that had their own helicopter, like a James Bond movie, their own helicopter on the rear deck of the yacht, and then they'd have friends come in from another country, so he'd fly into the airport to pick them up, to bring them out to the boat, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just a dream job. He was telling me about these crazy Russians that were in some place up in, I don't know, up around Labrador, someplace like that, where these guys were literally fishing with dynamite.
Oh no.
They just thought it was so fun. They were just probably half drunk and lighting sticks of dynamite, throwing them in the ocean, and fish would float up. And
Jeez.
I don't know if they were even keeping them. This was just entertainment,
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm talking about that. Why am I talking about that? It's supposed to be about herbs. What does dynamite have to do with? We're just having a good time here.
That's
and
right.
sharing it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The Malcolm and Blaine show.
Right, there we are. Cool.
We got sidetracked a lot there.
Yeah, it was all good. It's the sidetracks that are great, that are fun. That's how we.
Oh gosh.
That's how we find the gems, right? Cool. All
And
right.
that's why God invented people who invented editing.
Right, there we are.
So we might just be talking to ourselves here. You're not really seeing this. You're never going to see this. It's just for us to look back at.
We'll see. Yeah. Right on. Okay, well, why don't we leave it there, and maybe we'll head out and chat about a plant or two as well.
See what's in the yard?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. All
All right.
right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and
That was it.
we'll see you on the next one.